jolted forward, startled by the vision of Max Finkel and his goons standing over him, pointing and laughing, calling him names like sicko and freak. His breath caught in his throat as his heart pounded like thunder in his chest. Sweat covered every inch of him. Slowly, as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, his breaths became shorter, controlled. Mouth dry, he pulled his tongue free from the roof of his mouth, the stinging sensation lasting the briefest of seconds. He reached over to the nightstand for a drink, but then remembered he hadn't brought a glass to the bed with him. The one time I need it. With a deep sigh, Mike threw the light blanket off his naked form and swung his legs over the edge. His feet probed the hardwood floor for his slippers, and when they found them, he stood and walked over to the door in his robe. He walked to the kitchen for the needed drink. That day represents a turning point in my life. Why does it haunt me so? It was freshman year at Timber Creek High School when he met Peter for the first time. Who ordered the margarita? Mike had been walking to school when he happened upon a carcass of a dog at the side of the road. Curious, he stepped up to it and knelt down beside it. The beast's abdomen was split open with its inner intestines spilled, the side of its face devoid of fur, a crimson smear of flesh and scattered pebbles. It was beautiful. He reached a shaky finger towards the coiled section of tubular tissue. Max Finkel made his presence known. "You sick, perverted fuck!" Mike felt the boy's powerful hands on his back and he fell forward, his face falling into the gore that lay spread out across the street. "Ew," one of Max's thugs. "That's so gross." "You happy now, freak?" Max asked. Mike rolled over to face his tormentors, the metallic taste of blood on his lips. Max's buddies erupted into laughter at the sight of his blood-smeared face. Then their laughter turned into a chant. "Freak, freak, freak, freak!" "Is the little freak gonna cry?" Max asked, then was suddenly spun around and leveled by a right hook to the side of his jaw. Mac fell to the ground beside Mike. His head bounced back on the impact of the pavement. Mouths hung open in disbelief, eyes wide and fixated on the stranger dressed in blue jeans and a black Kiss t-shirt. "Anybody else need their clock cleaned?" he asked. His voice filled with confidence and strength Mike could only admire. Max's so-called friends bolted, leaving them there in the road, unconscious. Mike remained silent. Countless scenarios played out in his fractured mind. Images of Peter spinning around and pummeling him, of the boy pointing and laughing, and worst of all, of him simply walking away and never speaking to him again. "Are you all right?" the boy asked, extending his hand towards him. Mike accepted the gesture and got up to his feet before replying, "Yeah." "You got a name?" "Mike." "Nice to meet you. I'm Peter," said the boy as he turned and stared down at the dead dog. "You go to Timber High?" Mike could only nod in response. "We should probably get you cleaned up," Peter finally said. "I'll wash up at school. We should go. We don't want to be here when he wakes up." Peter took one look at his handiwork, then noticed, "The dog's pretty cool, huh?" Mike felt his eyes go wide. "Yeah, it was." As they walked to school, Peter talked to Mike in a manner that he was not accustomed to, one of respect and understanding. He wasn't disturbed by the mask of blood Mike wore, nor did he tease him about it. By the time the two had to go their separate ways for class, Mike had learned Peter moved to Florida from Massachusetts over the summer, loved rock and heavy metal bands, and was a horror movie buff who also found time to enjoy Spider-Man comics. All in all, definitely best friend material. There was only 40 minutes left in the school day when Mike asked to be excused from math to go to the bathroom. On his way there, he heard Max's unmistakable voice. He sounded as if he was trying to keep his voice down so as not to be overheard, but still remain threatening. Mike investigated and found Peter pinned to the wall, a trail of blood trickling down his lips from his nose and a small lump upon his forehead. Mike tiptoed closer, and it looked as though Peter had spotted him but remained quiet about it, and seemed to goad his attacker with an accusatory finger in mockery. Max had Peter at the top of the staircase, and Mike feared one wrong move on Max's part, and his new best friend would accidentally fall down the stairs and tumble to the concrete steps. He was able to get right up behind Max, and when the bully removed his hands from Peter's t-shirt in an effort to deliver one last blow, Mike shoved his hands into Max with all his might. The boy fell over, down the steps, and slammed his head. His neck buckled at the base of the crack, and his body slid lifelessly to the bottom. Holy shit, he remembered saying as his pulse raced from the adrenaline. Shh! Peter's hand went across Mike's mouth. Where are you supposed to be right now? The bathroom, he answered, as Peter removed his hand. Go, now, then get back to class. What about... Never mind, just go. Mike watched from the top of the stairs as Peter walked down to the body. He knelt down while pulling his right hand into his sleeve, then reached for Max's shoelaces. With the tugs, the laces came untied, and Peter quickly turned around and ran back to the top of the stairs. What are you waiting for? Peter asked. I didn't know what you were doing. I was covering your ass. Now go, meet me after school. Before the bell rang, signaling the end of the day, an announcement was made over the loudspeaker for the students to remain in their seats after the bell. They made no mention of Max's death, only reported that there was an accident and police were on the scene. Overwhelming panic encompassed Mike. The torture his mind played out during those 15 minutes had been far worse than the actual interrogation later. He and Peter were questioned for the same reasons. Both were out of class during the possible time of death, and for the fight that morning. Unable to speak with Peter before the interrogation, Mike was a shaky mess, afraid of saying the wrong thing. But he did the one thing he knew best and played dumb. The death was ruled an accident. Not a single adult could believe the boy had been murdered by one of his peers, and a partnership was born. Before meeting Peter, Mike could not remember a time when he wasn't afraid. Loneliness and fear, the two dominant emotions that defined his childhood. But Peter came along and taught him how to stand up for himself, to kill, to be cruel. Mike smiled as a glimpse of all their victims over the years flashed before his eyes. From their start with woodland creatures and neighborhood pets, to Julie the coffee bitch 2 weeks ago. Good times, he thought as he opened a cupboard and retrieved a glass. Once the glass was filled from the tap, he turned around and swigged a mouthful of water. Peter's up, he thought, seeing the light illuminating the shadows under the basement door. Damn it, Peter exclaimed as he fumbled with the collection of wires. This is more hassle than it's worth, he thought as he dragged himself out from underneath the large oak workbench. But who else could do it right? He knew the answer, no one. He took a moment to gaze upon the 6 computer monitors he had lined up, one for each server Mike scattered across Florida. They would allow him to monitor their activity and act as a safety net should his faith in his skills be misguided. With the proxy to mask their activity in place, the dummy servers to bounce the signal, and the static IP address he purchased, the forum would be virtually invisible, in theory. The wires dangling through the hole he cut in the surface, branching this way and that, boiled his blood. It was chaos. I need more twist ties, Peter mumbled. He walked past the basement stairs and over to Mike's workbench. Upon the shelves mounted over the work surface, identical to Peter's, were numerous glass jars housing a variety of useful consumables. Nails, screws, paper clips, elastics. Anything you want or need could be found. Even things that would never cross your mind, such as marbles and buttons. Peter sorted through the assortment of wire ties and selected 5 short black ones to blend with the wires, then returned to his setup. The plan was to get the network up and running and create a subnet mask, then store all the information for the website on Google servers. He alone would decide its members via ebytes and cryptic messages on other websites and message boards. Any smart enough to decode his genius deserved to be a member, and should any law enforcement agents discover the site, they would be led on a wild goose chase. The basement door opened and Mike descended the creaky steps with a glass of water. What are you doing up? Peter asked, not bothering to turn away from the computer monitors. Needed a drink. What about you? Couldn't sleep. How much longer? Man, Peter said, you're impatient. No, he said, mocking Peter, just anxious to help others. A chuckle escaped Peter's lips. Life was his to take from whoever he desired, and helping others contradicted his beliefs. But Mike was his best friend, a brother, had been for years, and there was nothing he wouldn't do for him, even if it meant suppressing his true self. What's so funny, Mike asked as he squatted to see Peter. It's just I find it odd, that's all. What, that we're going to be helping people rather than slaughtering them? Peter shook his head. You just want to see the pictures. Mike blushed. There are more than people there, don't say it. Peter tied off the last disorderly cable and slid out from underneath the desk. For the love of God, don't say it. A small smile formed on Mike's face, and Peter realized he was only going He was only doing it now to rile him. Brothers in blood! Bastard, he thought, and smiled as well. You're done? Not quite, Peter said, pulling his high-back chair in close. I still have to design the form and encrypt it. Anything I could do? You could leave. That would be a great help. It's not far-fetched for me to want to help others. You know, like you helped me that day? Call it a lapse in judgment. Mike crossed his arms in front of his chest. Come on, there's got to be something I can do. Actually, Peter paused, why don't you go troll some of your gore sites and find us some worthy members? Now that's something I can do, Mike said with a wide grin. Thank you.